Hello, hello. The name is Regis Kilbin, and the game is Hearthstone. And today I'm going to talk about the 10 best cards from the Grand Tournament. There were 132 cards released for the Grand Tournament expansion, and a vast majority of them have not seen play in the competitive metagame, but there are a handful that are seen on the ladder and in professional tournaments. And these are the 10 best of those cards, the 10 best cards from the Grand Tournament. And starting right away with number 10, it's going to be a card called Chill Maw. This 7 mana 6/6 dragon comes with Taunt by default, and it includes some dragon synergies. When it dies, it deals 3 damage to all minions, including your own. Chill Maw has seen a lot of play in dragon decks, particularly priest dragon decks, because it's a great answer to aggressive decks that tend to load up the board, and it was an even better answer to Grim Patron before it was unceremoniously nerfed earlier today. So Chill Maw has been a pretty solid card in the metagame for the last month or two. It may fall off a little bit now, but it still ranks on the top 10 list at number 10. Up next, at number 9, is the mage card Ronin. This 8 mana 7/7 also features a death rattle. This time it adds 3 copies of arcane missiles to your hand. So Ronin is a late game bomb you can drop on the board that forces an answer from your opponent, or at the very least typically will give you 3 arcane missiles for your hand. It's fantastic in tempo mage decks and has been explored in some other varieties as well. The 3 arcane missiles synergize so well with Archmage Antonidas that adding in a Ronin just makes sense. This is a pretty solid card and another great mage legendary. In the number 8 slot, we have a new paladin card called Competitive Spirit. This 1 mana secret allows you to give your minions +1/+1 at the start of a turn. This is pretty strong in Paladin since they do often have so many minions on the board at any given time. It's even better thanks to the secret Paladin deck that is so popular in the meta right now. It can really synergize pretty well because you'll typically play this card for free and it will thin out your deck, so it's nice to have. It's just a bonus. It's doubtful that this card remains popular if Secret Paladin ever falls off, just because secrets don't pack much punch. But right now it can't be ignored as one of the top Grand Tournament cards because you see it half of the time you're on the ladder in Secret Paladin decks. Up next, at the number 7 slot, we have yet another legendary. Sorry, mine is golden. This is Justicar Trueheart, a 6 mana card. It has 6 attack and 3 health. With the battle cry, replace your starting hero power with a better one. Now, Justicar Trueheart is not good for every single class because some of the upgraded hero powers just aren't that fantastic. But in Warriors in particular, and Paladins, and even a little bit in Priest, Justicar Trueheart has been seeing some play and has allowed things like Fatigue Warrior and really slow Control Warriors to thrive in this metagame. Justicar Trueheart at number 7. Up next, in the number 6 slot, we have another dragon, but this time around it's the 4 mana Twilight Guardian. This is a 2/6 dragon by default, but it has a battle cry that enacts some dragon synergies. If you're holding a dragon, it gains 1 attack and taunt, making it essentially a 4 mana Fin Creeper. The Twilight Guardian, you'll know if you've ever seen a Dragon Priest on the deck. This is kind of a centerpiece for the Dragon Priest deck. It's the perfect 4-drop. It has a lot of health that allows priests to buff it or heal it up, and it's just a great on-curve play in Dragon Priest. It's also seen in some other Dragon variants, but it's mostly in Priest, and it's always in Priest, and it's a nightmare when you have to face off against it. In the number 5 spot, we have a Druid card. Living Roots is a 1 mana spell. It allows you to either deal 2 damage to anything or summon 2 1/1 saplings. This is pretty popular among aggressive druids that have just started showing up on the ladder pretty recently. It allows them to get 2 bodies out onto the board early and chunk away for little bits of damage or set up for things like the Savage Roar combo. You can also use it as a direct damage spell for clear if you absolutely need to. So the flexibility of this card and the early game potential that it gives druids has made it pretty much a mainstay in a lot of new druid decks. Up next, at the number 4 spot, is another priest card. This is Wormrest Agent. It's a 2-mana 1/4, but it also has dragon synergy. With a battle cry, if you're holding a dragon, gain +1 attack and taunt. So it has the exact same battle cry as the Twilight Guardian, and it's very much the same card as Twilight Guardian. It just happens 2 turns earlier. This card has single-handedly made Dragon Priest a viable deck. It's just the perfect turn 2 card with a fantastic body. It completely denies aggro or face decks, and it gives priests everything they need in the early game. Wormrest Agent is undoubtedly one of the best cards in the Grand Tournament, and really just one of the best cards in the game right now. It falls at the number 4 spot. Now for number 3, we have another Paladin card. It's not our last Paladin card, but this time around it's the 4-mana Murloc Knight. This is a 3/4 body with a pretty neat Inspire effect. It summons a random Murloc. Now, even if Murloc Knight wasn't good in competitive decks, it would make this list purely because it is now the absolute best card in Arena. I feel pretty comfortable saying that. It is so good in Arena, and it's a common level card, which means it shows up for Paladins all the time in Arena, single-handedly making them a king of Arena classes right now. Even in competitive play, Murloc Knight is seeing quite a bit of action. It's just a really good way to fill up the board really quickly, and sometimes crazy things will happen if it summons another Murloc Knight or an old Murk-Eye or something like that. It's just packed with loads of value. It's great for Paladins to play on turn 4. It's even better on turn 6. This card can do so many different things and fits into pretty much every Paladin deck that's ever been. So Murloc Knight takes our number 3 spot. Now we're down to the final 2. Number 2 card of the top 10 Grand Tournament cards is the Darnassus Aspirant. This 2-mana Druid card has a 2/3 body and a pretty interesting combo of card effects. Up first is the Battle Cry. You gain an empty mana crystal anytime this hits the board from your hand. That is basically like a free wild growth attached to this card. Unfortunately, it does have the downside of a death rattle that you lose that mana crystal if the Darnassus Aspirant dies. But the interesting thing here is that the Darnassus Aspirant is pretty much all upside, right? You have the potential to gain a mana crystal for a turn or 2, and if it manages to live for a while, you're going to lose that mana crystal later, but you've already benefited from it. So it's all upside, very, very little downside on the Darnassus Aspirant. Druids have always been looking for a turn 2 minion to play that has a solid 3 health pool. And this is that card. It gives them an early game option. It helps them counter aggro decks. It allows them to ramp up as necessary. It can just do so many things, and it kind of fits into Druid perfectly. This is very much the minion that Druid has always needed in the early game, and frankly, it's one of the best cards in the Grand Tournament. It has made Druid decks incredibly viable. Mid-range, ramp, even aggressive Druids all are using the Darnassus Aspirant. When a card is in every single deck for a class, you know it's strong. But it's not quite as strong as the number 1 card in the Grand Tournament. This is without a doubt the very best card that the Grand Tournament has to offer. It is yet another Paladin card, because Paladin's got so many cool things in the Grand Tournament. This time around, it's the 6-mana 6/6 called Mysterious Challenger. This card has a Battlecry effect, the most hated Battlecry effect in the game, that puts one of each secret from your deck into the battlefield. So in other words, when you play this minion, suddenly the enemy Paladin will be wearing a hat full of secrets, a Christmas tree of yellow secrets, which makes it incredibly nightmarish to play against. Basically, Paladins get 12 mana of value instantly dropped onto the board on turn 6 anytime they have this card. And not only is it 12 mana of value, but it's a 6 card draw effect as well. So Mysterious Challenger, as underestimated as it was before the Grand Tournament launched, is now probably the single most hated card in the game. This thing is absurdly overpowered. It should be a legendary, because the effect is just so unique and so strong, but instead it's an epic, which means people get to use 2 in their deck, making it even more likely that they have this thing on turn 6 when they can play it. Right now, Secret Paladin is pretty much the best deck in the game. It's unbeatable by so many different things, and it's filling up the ladder with Mysterious Challengers and loads of secrets. This card is just absolutely way too strong. I would say it's overpowered and probably needs a look at from the balance team, but until then, Mysterious Challenger will challenge everything else as the very best card in the Grand Tournament.